If you've been in the alternate history sphere for any amount of time, you know the memes about South America. Nothing ever happens. In most alternate histories, South America never changes and is often forgotten about when discussing possible deviations from our timeline. But today, we're going to see the impossible. We are going to change South America. Today we're going to see what would happen if Peru-Bolivia survived. Peru-Bolivia was a short-lived union between Peru and Bolivia. More specifically, Bolivia, North Peru, and South Peru. The union dissolved after the War of Confederation, which pitted Peru-Bolivia against Chile and some Peruvian rebels. To be able to keep Peru-Bolivia alive, we need to alter the result of the decisive Battle of Yungay, which led to the destruction of most of the Peru-Bolivian army. In this new timeline, we will allow Peru-Bolivia to instead crush the United Restoration Army. We will also have them achieve even more major successes in pushing back the United Restoration Army, which is now simplified due to the routing of their troops. Eventually, the war would reach a point where both sides would be unwilling to continue the war, and a peace would have to be settled. The peace treaty would likely resolve minor border conflicts and guarantee the sovereignty of the Peru-Bolivian Confederation. Now that Peru-Bolivia is secure from external threats, we need to look internally, as rebellions or secessions are likely to tear the young nation apart, especially in this early state. We will have the Bolivian president José Miguel de Velasco undergo efforts to centralize the nation and increase the power of Bolivia within the Union. This will also decrease the power of Peru. This would be significant due to worries of future Peruvian secessions like the one which occurred in the latest war. Likely, his consolidation efforts would eventually culminate in him becoming the sole dictator of the nation. This dictatorship would not start as a negative for the Union, however, as Velasco would still want to improve the quality of life for his citizens and keep the peace in the nation. Utilizing the consolidation of power to their advantage, Velasco and his predecessors would be able to utilize the country's access to silver and tin to develop the nation, with railways, manufacturing industries, and significant agriculture to become a more healthy nation economically. During this period in our timeline, Peru and Bolivia signed several border treaties with its neighboring nations to secure future peace. However, the borders would look slightly different to that of our timeline due to a stronger diplomatic position of Peru and Bolivia as a combined nation. It is likely, however, that peace cannot last. Likely another invasion from Chile and Argentina occurs, trying to take back lost territories and trying to combat the rise of Peru-Bolivia. Paraguay likely also will join in to seize some of the disputed territory to their west. Despite the relatively powerful position of Peru-Bolivia, at least compared to our timeline, they would almost certainly be unable to challenge this coalition of states. Whoever the dictator of Peru-Bolivia is at this time would likely seek assistance from the United States to keep the nation alive. The United States would agree to help the nation in exchange for special business rights within Peru-Bolivia. America's military support allows the war to end in a white peace. America's economic interest in the nation results in a great success for the Peru-Bolivian economy, causing a massive boom as investments grow successful businesses in the country. This period of relative prosperity would soon come to an end as the line of dictators slowly become more totalitarian and self-serving. These later dictators likely begin several costly wars with their southern neighbors for little gain and even might begin losing some lands. These later dictators would also make more agreement with the US, selling more and more of the nation's key industries and businesses over to Americans for personal wealth, leading to the displacement of workers and decreasing wages for locals, leaving many homeless and in poverty. This situation would be incredibly similar to what happened in Iran in the 1900s due to British oil monopolies. Eventually, the people would become sick of the dictators, which no longer served the people and instead only served to benefit themselves. A revolution of primarily factory workers and farmers would erupt in the early 20th century, which would likely be successful in overthrowing the dictator due to a widespread dissatisfaction for him. In the aftermath of the revolution, they would attempt to establish democracy, likely having socialist leanings, and begin to seize foreign-owned companies and businesses to put them back in the hands of the locals. The Americans, however, seeing their economic interests in the Confederation being threatened, and the establishment of a potentially socialist nation in their backyard, would act to overthrow the government. Utilizing the CIA and a small armed forces, America would instigate a coup to prop up an American sympathizer as dictator, crushing the burgeoning democracy. Over the next half-century, the nation would suffer under the new dictator, with the economy crashing and food production suffering due to the Great Depression and World War II. The people would constantly riot and revolt against the dictator, but the military of Peru-Bolivia, as well as assistance from the CIA, would allow this dictator to crack down on its citizens. Throughout his reign, tens of thousands would die, and even more would be unemployed or in poverty as American-owned businesses dominate the country. Only after the dictator dies do the people have an opportunity to rise up. Assuming the dictator dies around the 1950s to 60s, a massive nationwide revolution would take place, with even those in the military rising up against the dictator's heir. This revolution would be secretly funded by the Soviet Union to weaken American influence in South America. After this great revolution, I could see the nation going to the left, although it could be anywhere from a mostly capitalist nation with some socialist elements to a full-on communist state. But for the sake of this video, I will assume it's somewhere in between. After decades of dictatorship, one person governing the nation would be a sore thought for the people of Peru-Bolivia, even if they are democratically elected, meaning there would be no single head of state or head of government. The nation would likely be governed by an aristocracy of representatives from the different states in the Union, forming a government of around 20 people. The socialist state of Peru-Bolivia would immediately begin nationalizing foreign assets and companies for the benefit of the people and the state. With investments from the Soviet Union, the nation would slowly begin to recover its economy and quality of living. The Soviets would also help to rebuild the Peru-Bolivian army in order to prevent any revolutions or invasions from overthrowing the government. Additionally, the employment of multiple leaders and support from the KGB prevents the US from instigating another coup in the nation, though the threat from America is always present. Eventually, the nation would likely evolve into a parliamentary democracy and adopt more capitalist elements similar to China, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union. In the modern day, this nation would have a higher standard of living and economy than Peru-Bolivia in our timeline, although it would be more diplomatically isolated, more aligned with Russia and China than the Western powers. Speaking of which, they would maintain a very large military and secret service to defend themselves from any American funny business. Overall, the nation would go through a very dark period and would be pushed into the arms of the Soviets, landing themselves far away from the Western sphere of influence. But they would end up with a successful socialist democracy and a booming economy with high standards of living. That'll be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe to be notified when I post a new video. Also remember to like and comment to help my channel grow. If you like this video, I have some similar videos on the screen now. Stay crazy!